Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
His Majesty King Abdullah has held a Ramadan iftar banquet at the royal court. It was attended by members of the royal family, cabinet ministers, members of the diplomatic corps, senior government officials, and representatives of various civic, economic, religious, and women's sectors in the country. This Ramadan held a special day for the children of the King Hussein Orphanage in Irbid, with a surprise visit by Their Majesties King Abdullah and Queen Rania. Their Majesties spent quality time listening to the young children's needs as well as the challenges facing them. King Abdullah donated a minibus and computers in addition to an annual financial package to help the center carry out its goals. Prime Minister Faisal al-Fayez renewed Jordan's commitment in helping the Iraqi people move forward in restoring the country's social, political, and economic stability. During his meeting with the Iraqi Minister of Planning and Developmental Cooperation, Mahdi al-Hafiz, al-Fayez stressed that Jordan will continue to offer all needed help to enable the Iraqi government overcome the current difficult situation. 7 people were injured in an ambush in Baqouba overnight, less than 2 hours after a car bomb targeting police in Baghdad killed 7 and injured 20. 2 other Iraqis have also been killed in 2 separate attacks in Baghdad. In Mosul, the U.S. Army said that 5 Iraqis have been killed and 15 others injured in a car bomb attack. While in Sadr City, a deadline for the handover of weapons has been extended for a second time. In Fallujah, U.S. forces freed the city's chief negotiator overnight after day-long battles and airstrikes on the outskirts of Fallujah. Israeli troops killed 5 Palestinians in Gaza as Prime Minister Ariel Sharon sought to dampen rising pressure for a referendum on his plan to withdraw from occupied Gaza. Palestinian Prime Minister Ahmed al-Quraysh condemned Israeli operations in northern Gaza and called on the international community to visit the area to assess the damage. Meanwhile, a Human Rights Watch report found that Israeli demolitions of homes in Gaza were not warranted by military necessity. The report is to be presented to the UN General Assembly later this month. Earlier, French Foreign Minister Michel Barnier met with his Israeli counterpart Sylvain Shalom and the Israeli Premier. Early voting for next month's U.S. presidential election got underway in Florida, with Democrats in particular urging supporters to use their early ballot as a means of avoiding a repeat of the recount fiasco in the 2000 election. Both Republican President George W. Bush and his Democratic challenger, Senator John Kerry, have focused a large part of their campaign effort in Florida. In 2000, the U.S. Supreme Court eventually halted ballot recounts, and Bush beat Vice President Al Gore by 537 votes.
Nine Iraqi police officers were killed in an ambush in southern Baghdad. The attack was one of many that took place during a new bloody day in Iraq. Meanwhile, American forces intensify their strikes on Al-Fallujah, causing more death and destruction. The American army announced that 2 soldiers were killed in a plane crash south of Baghdad. Also, a British civilian was injured in Al-Basra in a plane attack that coincided with separate mortar shell attacks in Baghdad, Al-Basra, and Al-Sadr. This comes as the deadline that was given by the Iraqi interim government to Sadr supporters to hand over their weapons ended.
الطائرات الحربية الأمريكية لا تفك عن سماء الفلوجة. Military warplanes never disappeared from the sky of Al-Fallujah. The city was subjected to more airstrikes on Sunday, killing some people and destroying homes, factories, and warehouses. As usual, the Americans justified their air raids by saying that their planes targeted Abu Musab al-Zarqawi's supporters. The airstrikes were focused on the city of Julan and on the industrial and military districts eastern of the city. Additionally, fighting erupted between the American forces, which were advancing in their tanks, and the fighters who used missiles and mortar shells. The fighters downed an American helicopter in the industrial district and destroyed a Humvee. The American army did not confirm that, but they acknowledged that 2 soldiers were killed and 2 others were injured in southwestern Baghdad. This proves that the resistance against the American forces is not confined in one area. This also was confirmed when Iraqi fighters attacked an electrical technical team by mortar shells while they were on an American vehicle. Also, the British forces were targeted in separate attacks in Al-Basra. In addition, a road bomb exploded in southern Baghdad, injuring British civilians who worked in detonating explosives. As usual, the armed fighters attacked the Iraqi police, killing 9 of them between the cities of Latifiyah and Yusufiyah, southwestern Baghdad. Also, a suicide bomber exploded his booby-trapped car, killing at least 5 Iraqis and injuring others. In Baghdad, the El Hamra Hotel, where Western journalists and contractors are staying, was attacked by mortar shells. No loss of life or injury was reported. A similar attack happened in the poor Shiite neighborhood in a southern city. Mortar shells landed in a playing field where Al-Mahdi army militia were handing over their weapons. The attack happened shortly before the Iraqi interim president Iyad Allawi arrived to the area to inspect the last day process of handing over the weapons, which is viewed as victory to Allawi's government. But the American military officials said that they are not satisfied with what has been achieved in this regard. The Americans said that a southern militia handed over limited number of weapons and that many were old and ruined. This shows that the Americans prefer the method of maintaining and increasing military pressure. Yes, they released 260 Iraqi detainees on Sunday, but some of the released said that they were treated badly in prisons. They added that they still do not understand why they were arrested. The American army justified these arrests by saying that the detainees are suspected of having links to the armed resistance. Unprecedented Israeli incursions have been wreaking havoc in the Jabalia refugee camp for the past 2 weeks. UNRWA's Commissioner General, Peter Hansen, examined the extent of the damage and destruction caused by the operation. He urged the international community to intervene and provide aid for the reconstruction of the homes destroyed by the Israeli occupation forces. As is the norm after every incursion, the United Nations Relief and Workers Agency, UNRWA's Commissioner General, Peter Hansen, visited northern Gaza and inspected the destruction left behind in this region. He particularly inspected the area in the Jabalia refugee camp and Beit Lahia, which were included in the 17-day-long Israeli operation Days of Penance. The United Nations official promised to help the refugees who lost their homes.
We are still short of all of the commodities.
We are still short of all commodities, and we are working very hard to build replacement housing. We urge the international community to relieve the suffering of the residents of the Jabalia refugee camp.
A number of refugees explained to Hansen the suffering they endured during the military operation. According to initial statistics provided by the international agency, more than 90 homes were demolished.
Our family consists of 20 members. 3 of my children are blind, and my son-in-law was recently martyred, leaving behind a 7-month pregnant wife who's living with me. 3 people needed my help, and 20 other people were screaming and grabbing onto me. They surrounded me in the house, telling me to get out. Today's the day of penance, they said. What did we do to them to tell us it's the day of penance?
130 people were killed in these incursions, and the Israeli forces bulldozed the land and destroyed the region's infrastructure. Despite the significance of Hansen's visit to northern Gaza, particularly the Jabalia refugee camp, this visit will not impact Sharon's future plans when it comes to the continued aggression against the Palestinians. Hazem Badaru, Abu Dhabi Television, in front of the Jabalia refugee camp, northern Gaza.
In London on Sunday, thousands of anti-war and anti-globalization activists marched to protest the US-led occupation of Iraq. Similar protests took place in the US and Mexico as UN Secretary General Kofi Annan countered Bush and Blair by saying the Iraq war hasn't made the world any safer.
Central London was the arena for tens of thousands of demonstrators to protest against the Iraq war as British Prime Minister Tony Blair struggled to shake off fierce criticism of the invasion back home. Organizers said that between 65 and 75,000 protesters had taken to the streets for the peaceful march, which began at Russell Square close to the British Museum. Police put the figure between 15,000 and 20,000. Protesters from around the world plunged banners and blew whistles as they marched towards Trafalgar Square, where a mass rally was taking place.
We've lost 68 men already. The Americans have lost well over 1,000. The war is illegal. We've invaded a sovereign state. There are no weapons of mass destruction. These troops and my son have all been sent out there, lied to and deceived. We were all told we were under threat of WMD. Now, had my son been killed by a WMD strike, I wouldn't be here today. I'd have to accept that. That's a soldier's lot. It's a risky life. But I'm not going to accept my son and 68 others killed through lies and deceit, and Mr. Blair is now trying to put more soldiers in that position.
Meanwhile, other anti-war demonstrations erupted in Mexico and the United States. In Mexico City, dozens of protesters gathered outside the U.S. Embassy, railing against the war in Iraq and U.S. President George W. Bush. Activists from the Stop Bush group and other NGOs say they are planning a protest march in the Mexican capital for October 30, and that they will also mount another protest at the U.S. Embassy there. In the United States, hundreds of workers gathered at the Lincoln Memorial on Sunday to demand health care, guaranteed social security benefits, and an end to the war in Iraq.
I'm here today to try to stop the waste of money on foreign wars that have not been thought out carefully, not considered carefully. And obviously Bush is not the candidate to do that.
Our sisters and brothers, U.S. get out of...
And in a new blow to the war allies, UN Secretary General Kofi Annan said that the US-led war in Iraq hasn't made the world any safer.
Do you think the world is safer or more dangerous?
I cannot say the world is safer when you consider the violence around us, when you look around you and see the attacks around the world, terrorist attacks around the world, and you see what's going on in Iraq. I cannot say the world is safer. We have a lot of work to do as an international community to try and make the world safer.
Asked about Iran, he said that if Washington were to decide to go for military action against Iran, it would probably be illegal under the UN Charter.
Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon said that nothing would deter him from his plan to pull out from the Gaza Strip after his meeting with settlers failed to reconcile the two parties. And Sharon rebuffed all calls for a national referendum on the plan.
Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon said after meeting with Israeli President Moshe Katsav that nothing would deter him from carrying out his plan to pull out from the Gaza Strip and dismantle 24 Jewish settlements.
There is no connection between a referendum and a civil war. I think the worst thing is to give in to threats of violence and to talk about disobeying orders. These are very grave things. I believe that things will be prevented because these are real dangers.
Sunday's talks between Sharon and settlers fiercely opposed to his plan ended in acrimony amid warnings that the country could now face civil war. The meeting at the Premier's office failed to reconcile any of the differences between the settlers and their one-time champion, who rebuffed all calls for a national referendum. Sharon hopes that the plan will boost Israel's security. However, the settlers reject any territorial concessions to the Palestinians and any dismantling of settlements as a dangerous precedent. Vice Chairman of the main Yesha Settlers Council, Shaul Goldstein, said that the settlers would now step up their lobbying of MPs to ensure the project is defeated in a parliamentary vote on October 25.
Very disappointing. Very disappointing. I came personally to listen and to broadcast what I feel in my stomach, what I want to bring to the people, what arguments I have against this plan. But we didn't find him listening to our arguments. He's very determined to continue with this plan, and we think it's bad news to Israel.
While polls have shown there is a clear majority in the country in favor of the plan, Sharon is wary that his opponents could manage to mobilize support on a far greater scale than those who are in favor.
I believe that if we will find a way both to have a Knesset decision next week, but it will be conditional in referendum, I believe that we can get together and find a way to avoid a real split in the Israeli society. There is a threat, there is a danger that we will just tear up the Israeli society, and I believe that we have to do everything that we can in order to avoid it.
The plan will see all 8,000 settlers transferred from the Gaza Strip to other occupied territories, mainly in the West Bank. There, Sharon is resolved to strengthen the occupation of Palestinian land. Dozens of right-wing demonstrators gathered outside the Prime Minister's office, with some holding up banners calling Sharon a traitor. And pro-disengagement Israeli supporters also turned up with their demands calling for a pullout from Gaza next year.
Prime Minister Ariel Sharon was expected Monday to meet main opposition Labour Party leader Shimon Peres as he struggles to stitch together a parliamentary majority for his Gaza pullout plan. Although Sharon has made clear he is against a nationwide referendum, there appears to be a growing movement within his own Likud party for a U-turn. Sharon lost his parliamentary majority back in June. His government has so far been kept afloat by Labour, which has indicated that it will provide a safety net in parliament, but only in votes connected with a disengagement plan. While Sharon may not have to form a new coalition by next Monday, hoping that Labour will again come to his rescue, he is aware that his government's minority status is untenable in the long term. French Foreign Minister Michel Barnier began a highly charged visit to Israel on Sunday, pledging to fight against the anti-Semitism that, according to Israeli leaders, is washing over France. Barnier's visit aims at mending fences, and it is the first by a senior French official since Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon said in July that France was host to the wildest anti-Semitism and urged French Jews to flee the country. French officials called Sharon's comments unacceptable, and French Jews also criticized him. Barnier began his trip with a ceremony at the Holocaust Memorial. He will also meet with Sharon, his counterpart Sylvain Shalom, and President Moshe Katsav. However, no talks with Palestinian officials have been lined up, possibly because Israel has argued earlier that European Union countries such as France have shown a bias in its conflict with the Palestinians, threatening to limit their role in the peace process.
I am completely determined to bring the disengagement plan to the Knesset for approval on October 25th as scheduled. That was the firm message from Prime Minister Sharon to President Moshe Katsav this morning. The Prime Minister said yesterday's tense meeting with the settler leaders had not changed his mind about implementing his plan. Sharon rejected the settlers' claims that a referendum might avert the danger of civil war, which he called a grave and dangerous threat to the country. The Prime Minister also ruled out the possibility of early elections. President Katsav, who's been quoted as favoring a referendum on disengagement, was non-committal today, saying it is not fitting for the president to speak out on such a deeply controversial issue. In other news, the trial of 11 members of a group called Anarchists Against the Fence began at a Tel Aviv magistrate's court today. They are accused of rioting and disturbing the peace during the protest in Tel Aviv last February, in which they took to the streets and blocked traffic to protest the separation fence. According to the state prosecutor's office, the anarchists are also attacked and beat policemen. But whether the case will proceed remains uncertain in light of comments made by Judge Muki Landman at this morning's hearing. Landman suggested that the charges against the bunch were unjustified, claiming the anarchist protest was no different than any other demonstration. The prosecution will deliver its response at a hearing on November 25th.
With new polls in the U.S. showing the race for the White House is tight between President George W. Bush and Senator John Kerry, both candidates found new ways to rally supporters in the campaign's two most crucial states, Florida and Ohio. Kerry was in Ohio attacking Bush on Iraq, the economy and many other matters, and accusing him of being disconnected from problems facing Americans, while Bush campaigned in Florida pledging to oppose mandatory military service. Meanwhile, the New York Times endorsed today Senator John Kerry for president, praising the Democratic candidate for his willingness to re-evaluate decisions when conditions change. On his part, President George W. Bush received the backing of the Chicago Tribune, which praised his resoluteness on the defining challenge of our age. Belarusians voted today in a referendum on whether to change the constitution and permit President Alexander Lukashenko to run for a third term. Voters also were electing lawmakers to the nation's 110-seat House of Representatives. Official results weren't expected until tomorrow. However, ECOM Center, working under the oversight of the Belarusian Central Election Commission, found that 76% of the 12,000 voters had to the said yes referendum and 24% no to Lukashenko's second term expire in September 2006. He has said he would run again if voters approve the measure in today's referendum. Iran reiterated today that it won't accept any proposal depriving it of the right to enrich uranium. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman was quoted as saying. The same source said that Iranian and European officials have had good discussions over the past few days, which they will pursue later. A multilateral UN force is keeping a good presence in Haiti to contain the violence which erupted since September the 30th, when supporters of ousted President Jean-Bertrand Aristide took to the streets to demand his return from exile. According to a UN resolution in April, the multinational force should have 6,600 soldiers and 1,600 police. As part of the force, Brazil has kept 1,200 soldiers in Haiti since May, while China has sent 95 police to boost the UN peacekeeping force there.
The
Muslims in Egypt and a number of countries throughout the Islamic and Arab world celebrate the beginning of the holy month of Ramadan. In Cairo, there were many different ways to celebrate the holy months, beginning with the classical recitation of the Holy Quran and visiting family and friends during the iftar, breaking fast at dinner time in appreciation of God's bounties, in addition to setting Ramadanic tents and festive decorations. Traffic was organized in the streets of Cairo on the first day of the holy months of Ramadan. What helped to do that is the fact that Ramadan began on Friday, the holiest day of the week. There was little rush hour traffic. Family and loved ones gathered together on the holiday. Meanwhile, others went to work, continuing their daily lives routine. Amid all this, security men and traffic police broke their fasts on the streets. In the Zainab al-Ariq neighborhood in Cairo, people rushed to their homes at iftar time to be with their families and children. Among them was the artist Rashwan Saeed.
May you have a blessed year. Last year we came here at the same time. Every year on the first day of Ramadan, we go to visit Our Lady Zainab's grave. It is where we were born. Every year, my mother-in-law invites the entire family to her home on the first day of Ramadan.
I pray for peace, peace, peace. And I pray for calm for all the country. I pray for no fighting and for security, so that people can live in security.
Everything is so sad. I hope every Ramadan is peaceful. But this year, it is not peaceful. Considering all the things we are seeing on TV in Iraq and Palestine, I pray to God that all this ends and that Ramadan is peaceful all over, in Egypt and throughout the Arab world.
Some of the nice Ramadan traditions. During the month the Holy Quran was revealed are moments of calm and good food, increased worship, prayers, and reading of the Quran.
Of course, Ramadan is a great thing. We wait for it from year to year. It is a great opportunity to bring people together, and the family gets together in the family's home or one of their homes. You know, of course, everyone has problems. Everyone has their work to do. So it's a great chance for people to come together in one place. It helps to improve relations between families and relatives. I think that these relations have begun to weaken. But in Ramadan and in the Eid, it is an opportunity to become strengthened.
Other scenes of celebration during the holy months come in the form of festive decorations. This was established by the Fatimids more than 1,000 years ago. Many of the Ramadan traditions come from this period in history.
There is no doubt that this year, thank God, there is more business than last year. As you know, there is a political confusion, so prices slightly fell. You know, we currently can't handle any price increase. But thank God that the market is doing better this year than last.
There were free iftar tents, but I never have seen it like this. It is much better than before. Everywhere I go, I see these tents. This is very, very, very good. It is something that makes me happy when I see it. Thank God, the Lord of the universe. Also, there is still so much goodness and good people here. Thank God, the Lord of the universe, that we remain like this. May every year be blessed.
The Fatimids came with many of the Ramadanic celebratory traditions, but the Ottomans, Sufis, the Ayyubi dynasty, and the Mamalik also played a social role in extending other social customs. One can see increased number of Ramadan tents throughout the Republic, offering free of charge iftar dinners. Egypt has always been blessed with goodness since God created the earth and until the end of days. May every year be blessed.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.